So, welcome everyone to the Healthy Leader Expert Forum, where we basically just get really honest about what healthy leadership looks like for you. And we believe that you are the expert of you and that you have your own unique journey in what healthy looks like. And my guest today totally agrees with that, and he takes it a little bit further and has taught me this on a deeper level that there are also no leadership experts. And he lives that. He doesn't show up as an authority. He's more of a fellow traveler. And when he teaches, which I have had the honor to witness, you can see what leadership looks like. And he 100% invites you to do that on your own. And so I think today will be a lot of fun for you all and meaningful for you to see what your leadership looks like. And he has a new book out, which takes a deceptively simple question and it turns it into one of the most clarifying tools that I have come across in a long time. And that is, am I building or am I diminishing? So let me do a quick introduction and then we'll get started. So, Doug Crandall is a leadership development educator, not a leadership expert. He's a former Army officer and a longtime instructor at West Point. He is the co-author of Hope Unseen, Permission to Speak Freely. He's the editor of Leadership Lessons from West Point. That's a big deal. And he has his forthcoming book, Building or Diminishing, and he is the head of teaching at the Referent Group. So, Doug, welcome back.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks for having me back. Putting up with me one more time.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, if to have a double guest, you are it. I think you're the first one who's been on here twice.
Let's
So, but
go.
yeah, let's go. So, for anyone who is just meeting you for the first time, give us a short version. Who is Doug Crandall? How'd you end up spending, the last 25 years teaching leadership?
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you do this book, you got to kind of summarize your bio in a few sentences. So I've got a little bit better at that question. I like this part of it, as we put in the book, that I'm actually the son of a West Point graduate, the grandson of a West Point graduate, the father of a West Point graduate, and then a West Point graduate myself. Um, all of which would make it sound like we're part of a huge military family, which we're not really, although that sounds odd. My grandfather died trying to escape from a prison ship in World War II, and then my dad spent most of his career at Boeing, so didn't spend a lot of time in the army. My daughter's a newly promoted army captain right now, so
Congrats.
that's I would say husband and father, and I love sports, and like that's kind of simple. And then the West Point connection has really what's brought me into this journey of teaching leadership.
Yeah. Yeah, and living it. I think teaching it and living it are not always the same thing.
Sure, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to start with your book, and this is a little bit of an anomaly because your book hasn't officially come out. Is it coming out in the summer?
June 8th. June 8th officially. We're giving it to a few people at our conference and one of the places we teach before that, but June 8th.
All right, that's exciting. So I have had the honor of reading it ahead of time, and I've kind of been living in it for a few weeks. And there's a lot that we could get into. We don't have enough time to get into all of it, but I'd love for you to give us kind of the elevator version of what it's about and who you wrote it for.
Yeah, it's as you said at the outset, there's a simple question in the book, like with every interaction, am I building or diminishing? Those I lead, but honestly, Tracy, like in writing it and living it for several years now, when I checked in last night to the Home Two Suites in Hickory, North Carolina, am I building or diminishing the guy I'm checking in with? Through body language, action, inaction, whether how long it takes us to answer a text. I mean, uh, that's the central question. And it's interesting how it developed. Was I was giving keynotes on this before I wrote the book, and one of them, it just felt kind of soft because, and there is, I'll just admittedly, there's this human element of it that's really important to me. Like, how are we making other people feel? But
Right.
as a leader, that's part of the equation. You've also got to accomplish the mission, and in some cases you can't be worried about how you're making people feel or whatever. And so then there was this excellence component that we layered into it, basically on two axes. And am I expecting excellence and demanding excellence? And then how am I making people feel in that pursuit?
One of the things that you do talk about is, and you put this right up front in the introduction, You say that you basically not refuse, but you definitely don't like universal principles, except for one thing, and that was that diminishment never serves a productive leadership purpose. Why that one?
Yeah, and Tracy, with your audience, I'll admit I'm not even sure I believe that. It's and I just didn't want to qualify it, and I think the book's humble enough that people will get that. There was no need to qualify it. I'd love people to argue with it. Like that's the point. I think in rare cases, when someone has an ego and you're being very intentional that they need to be taken down a notch or something like that, there might be a case
I see.
where me diminishing you, but you're still building the person because you're doing it for their benefit. So I actually thought through all that. Like it's not really diminishment; it's an intentional tool to help someone grow. Um, but yeah, I think Tracy, you nailed it. And we've talked about this a lot. I think we're all unique. We're leading different people. Every situation is different. I continue to use the example in healthcare that leading in a hospital the day after the pandemic started was an entirely different venture. Entirely. Like I watched hospital CEOs go through it and chief nursing officers and incredibly different than the day before. And so the idea that we would tell people these are the 7 ways to lead, it really is just not the way it works. It sells and it gives us comfort and we like to latch on to it, but it's not, in the end, it's not as helpful as us figuring it out for ourselves.
And figuring it out for ourselves in that moment.
Yes, absolutely. Right. Good.
Yeah.
Because our situations, what I thought was true yesterday might be different tomorrow when I run into this person in this situation. And I mean, a perfect example, and I shared this at a conference last year, is this phrase that struck me as leadership gospel when I was a junior in college. And most of us have heard it, that people don't care how much we know
That's it.
until they know how much we care. Yeah, that was it. And I read that and I was like, yes, like I want to be a caring leader. Like this is it. And I am not, I have to be really careful when I say this because I believe in caring leadership. I am not saying that's not true, but it's fundamentally untrue that people don't care how much we know until they know how much we care.
Right.
I ran into people who did not care how much I cared. And then what did I do? Right? Like, what do I do now that you don't care if I know your kids' names or I like wish you happy birthday? You just want me to know my job and not waste your time and accomplish the mission. You care about my expert power and not my personal power. So,
Hmm.
yeah, the idea that we get whenever I hear that, it's funny now, and it's funny how much my perspective on that one phrase has changed, not through not believing that caring doesn't matter, but just believing that there are no maxims.
Right. And that you can hold both of those ideas to be true depending on the situation, depending on the moment, depending on the individual that you're talking to in the moment.
A- Absolutely, and
Yeah.
it hasn't changed my desire to care about people, but it's almost an egocentric thing to think
Mhm.
that if I care about you, you'll respond to me.
Right.
And
Like I,
if you Yeah, and if you don't, then you're the problem. No, like if I care about you and you don't respond to that, as a leader, I got to figure something else out.
right. And the other thing that you said, and I underlined this multiple times, is you said you can use it as an intentional tool. When we were talking about diminishing somebody, if you are being intentional, then you can use that, which is to me has response written all over it versus reaction. Like I'm going to diminish you, but I'm going to go ahead and do that intentionally. It's almost like parenting. I'm going to do this intentionally because
Sure.
that's something that's based off of my values.
Yeah, we this is recent, and we're working with an organization that does like kind of more takeaways than sometimes we provide. So we came up with a takeaway for them around difficult conversations. And SBI is a Center for Creative Leadership model of situation, behavior, impact, which is a lot like this thing like what we've taught together.
Mhm.
But we came up with a new SBI just almost for fun to layer them next to each other that was selfless, bespoke, and intentional. So if this isn't about me, it's in service of you. It's selfless, and it's bespoke. It's specifically designed for you, who you are, and I'm doing that intentionally. Then that's solid leadership. I'm not just diminishing you, or I'm not giving you this hard constructive feedback so I can get it off my chest. I'm giving it to you because I think it'll help you.
Or because it's the way that leadership is done, so I'm going to do it like that because somebody told me how to do that 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's just the way I am. Yeah, right, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. So I want to ask you about something that I think that that might be misconstrued from your book. And there's a comment floating around somewhere that compares it to multipliers.
Yeah.
And I get
Yeah,
why. Yeah. So
this
talk.
is funny, and this is kind of an inside story for whoever's listening. Is I actually Greg McEwen, the co-author of Multipliers, is a friend of mine, and so I'd read that, and it came out in 2013, 2014, and I had forgotten that they actually compare multipliers and they call the other side diminishers. And I went back and forth with people because I had been working on this for a couple of years, and there wasn't um, a connection there in the sense of like diminish isn't a trademarked word. But I didn't know if anyway. I talked to lots of people, and it was just I just didn't change it because it's so different. Multipliers is a valuable book, but it's a complex book. They based it on, hey, we've looked at all this research and we're sort of qualitatively saying that multipliers do these things. One thing in particular that we use in our book, Permission to Speak Freely, was that multipliers want to know what everyone else wants to know. If you can kind of if you're not multiplying, you can kind of think I need to be the smartest person in the room. And
Right.
the book I wrote is really not about any of that. It is truly about the singular question: am I building or diminishing you along two lines? The things I say and how I treat you, and then the expectations I have of you.
hmm And I'll share with you, it's interesting, even as I was getting ready this morning and I was thinking about the simplicity of that question, like that I like to have simple models for people to start to organize who they want to be in the moment and how they can be healthy in the moment or in the situation. And the simplicity of asking that question, am I building or am I diminishing? I think one of the most important and powerful questions that I have come across. And so, what made you bring it down to just this one sentence? Like, why that building versus diminishing?
Tracy, I like this question and I don't like it at the same time because I think there are when we wrote
Why?
Permission to Speak Freely, there are a couple stories from my own life where I could say, like, I could point to, I tell the story right at the outside of the book where I almost fired a tank round that would have killed somebody. And someone told me, don't fire at that one. And that was just this clarity and the importance of people speaking freely. And with this one, I don't know exactly, but I would say a couple of years ago, I just started thinking about the things I say to my adult kids, the things I was saying to cadets in a classroom. And I just gradually started to feel like there's no reason I should ever say anything that makes someone else feel smaller. And it just, I can't point to a moment other than 2023 ish, 2022. It just started to resonate with me. I mean, it's a little off topic because you asked when I start thinking about it, but I will share. I mean, there's tons of stories in the book. People might get story fatigue reading the book, but
Oh, great stories.
one of my favorites, I think, and I got to be careful because I got to keep reading it and think about what are my favorites. I don't need favorites, but I came across this Instagram podcast about the comedian Nate Bargatze, and writing the book was a little bit like I'm not a musician, but composing jazz music because I was picking things up that I mean, my granddaughter's trying to color on the back of my MacBook, while I'm writing the book, and I end up just putting that in the book. And um, I came across this Instagram reel about Nate Bargatze, who's gone from mildly known comic to one of the biggest comics in the world at this point.
Mhm.
And he is completely clean. And he gets asked about that a lot. Like, why do you ever swear? You don't tell crude jokes. And um, I've heard him ask that question before. He's like, it's just kind of who I am. Just kind of, but recently he answered it very pointedly. And he
Mm.
said that years ago, he actually had a clip up on MySpace, because that tells you how long ago it was on MySpace, and I actually went and found it. I found it on YouTube and I watched the joke. And it goes something to the effect of like, it's tough time to be a prostitute because the economy's down. And if you're in New York City, you're getting murdered. And I guess there had been headlines about prostitutes getting murdered in New York City. And then he actually continues the joke to
Wow.
talk about like them going to tell the person's father that she was killed. And he was like, oh, anyway, he got a message via MySpace from a woman that he said was in that line of work that said, hey, this really hurt me. This joke hurt me. It makes me emotional to think about it. And so Nate says he wrote her back and was like, I'm sorry. I'll never tell that joke again. But he went like way further. And
Mm.
he actually said at that moment, I decided that I never want to tell a joke that makes someone in the audience feel bad. I mean, that's incredible. Think about the industry of comedy and all the people that
Mm,
are going to listen to your jokes. And so he started making fun of himself and clearly got permission from his wife to make fun of his, his
very good.
wife and his parents, like the people that are in his circle. And
Hmm.
so powerful. Like it encapsulated, I would say, like that's, I don't know the moment I came to that, but that, 3 years ago or 2 years ago, I just came to this moment like, yes, that's what, why would we ever say something that makes someone else feel bad? And there's so much of that in our world right now
Right.
that it wasn't written with that purpose, like to fix the world's problems. It was written from, I really believe in this. Let me write about it.
So, what's really interesting to me, what I was thinking about earlier is that, as you know, my mom just passed away. So we were with her on Mother's Day on Friday, and then she passed. Well, we were with her celebrating Mother's Day earlier on Friday, and then she passed on Sunday. And the last video I have of her, she is saying, are asking her for advice for our soon to be her first great granddaughter. And she said simply, love, 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 love as much as you possibly can. And so
Mm,
the reason I was thinking about that is because really, when you talk about building up or diminishing, we're talking about are you in some capacity, whether it's a smile to the clerk or it's holding your tongue with a family member, or how are you loving? How are you building people up? Not to say that you don't sometimes do it in a way that maybe looks unloving, but that, I mean, it's like, to me, it's like a life maxim, really.
yeah, it is. And it's, um, what I don't want to call it, it's a responsibility as a leader, I think. Like as a human being, it can feel like it's a lot. I mean, I don't, I wouldn't protest people who said, boy, this is a lot. Everything I'm saying, I need to think about it. And
Mhm.
the thing I love about the book, though, is we do get into some of the neuroscience. And if you start to practice this habit, it becomes part of who you are. And I've felt that. Like, I mean, that's what I love about this is I'm testifying to things that I've been through on a very simple level as I continue to ask myself this question. By zero means am I perfect? Like, I mean, I still say things and do things and some situations, I mean, I describe them in the book as like climbing the hill when you're running, like you're running on the flat ground and you're doing it, and all of a sudden the situation comes around and it's harder not to diminish because your heart rate's up or whatever the metaphor might be. But yes, it's a way of being that makes the world better. But as leaders, we have this outsized power. People remember what we say. It's amplified, and I think it is this responsibility to take it that much more seriously when we hold power in people's lives.
Right. And responsibility, I think, is also response ability, the ability to respond, which goes to one of my questions I was going to ask you. Where do you see where people may be diminishing when they don't intentionally mean to do that?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'll answer both of them. Make sure I answer how you asked the question because I started to drift to this part in the book where we say like I'm trying to get it right, but like, do you agree with the statement that like as a leader you need to tell people or you should tell people what they need to hear no matter how hard it is to say? Like, so that's how we phrase it. You should tell people what they need to hear no matter how hard it is to say. And there's a little bit of trickery, there because I personally believe, and it's a stereotype that we call them drivers in the book, and we praise drivers. Like there's no judgment in this book. I say that multiple times in the introduction. Like this is not written with judgment. I'm not
Mhm.
trying to tell anybody how to be. I hope the book is an invitation into a classroom, right? Like we're just there together. But so drivers do a lot of good things, and drivers are people with really high expectations that don't provide a lot of praise almost or are diminishing at times but in service of a mission and they get things done. I kind of expect drivers to agree with that quote. Yeah, I'll tell people like what they need to hear no matter how hard it is to say. And then we get a couple paragraphs down and I say, okay, well, what if what they need to hear is you're the best, or hey, you did amazing yesterday. And we can actually flip it around. And for me personally, at this point in my life, it has always been like this because I was almost different 20 years ago. I could say
Right.
the tough stuff and I flipped and I talk about that journey a little bit. For me
Hmm.
at this point, though, it's sometimes tough to have the tougher conversations. You need to do this better or hold people accountable. As a high school basketball coach, I think I did a great job building belief, but what didn't always could have held standards a little higher at times.
Mm.
But I say, um, I don't totally get why someone can't just walk up every day and tell someone they're doing a great job or I appreciate you or whatever. So we all have our struggles. We all have our struggles. And I think to that person, the ultimately to answer your question, ask your people. And there's all kinds of research around this from Kouzes and Posner that we teach a lot, that the least leadership practice on their leadership practice inventory is
Mm.
this idea that we ask people how our actions are impacting them. And so, are you going to get the truth? Probably not if you already don't have the trust. So that becomes tough. But even just the willingness to ask the question, I think, is a great step.
I don't want to gloss over what you just said because I think there were two things. We're going to get into trust. That's one thing. And then the second thing is the willingness to ask that question. And that's not I don't think that it's as simple as it sounds to say, hey, how am I impacting you? And I think it sounds, oh, that's an easy question to ask. But very often we don't ask that exact question, which I think is to your point, because it's a little uncomfortable to know the answer.
Yeah, and it when we get the answer, even if we want it, then it's going to require some work. But
Right.
I'll give you just another story as an example of why it's so important. I won't go into the story, but I share a story about our youngest son and his job search in the book, and there was a moment where he was going through this year long and rejections and different things, and he had this great opportunity. He was telling us about it just one night, sitting in our living room, and I started to laugh because and he got this kind of hurt look on his face, and he said, "Are you laughing at me because you think this is stupid?" And it was so, I mean, I'm just so glad he's willing to say it. And I was like, no, buddy, like I'm laughing because this is awesome. But even just my laughter, it wasn't my fault. Like I was not laughing at him. I was
Right.
laughing because this was amazing, but he didn't know. And so that could have been completely diminishing if he hadn't asked. Well, you laughed at me when I got this job. And it wasn't an unreasonable interpretation of my laughter.
Right.
But the people we lead, like how often are they going to say that? Is the trust there for them to say, hey, why do you look like that right now? Or whatever it might be.
Right. And that's why one of the things that we talk about is, you can discover how you are thinking, you can design these certain tools that you're going to use, and then daring to, in that moment, recognize that your son was hurt by that, and then to be able to ask. That's a big deal, to be true to yourself in that moment. So talk a little bit about the trust piece and why you didn't write a chapter specifically on trust.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I shared that with you. I shared the book with a younger friend, early 30s, kind of getting a different generational perspective. Also, someone who thinks totally different than me. This guy was a army wrestler, tough as nails, army ranger in the Ranger Battalion, and like infantry officer for it. So love him to death, and I just thought he sees the world differently than me, so let me give it to him. And so I asked for like overarching feedback, and he said, hey, you mentioned trust multiple times, especially in the chapter on expecting excellence. Like if we're going to expect excellence from people, they have to trust that we have their best intentions in mind. When we're telling them you got to do this better, you got to step it up, they got to trust that we have their best intentions in mind. So he said you might need a chapter on trust. And I thought about it. I talked to some people about it. And trust is just it's a book unto itself, or more, or whatever. It's a very nuanced concept. The research on trust is a little bit all over the place and not pointed in the way that maybe like transformational leadership is, or something like expectancy theory, which we talk about in the book is. Uh,
Mhm.
so I ultimately I did add a couple paragraphs of kind of a bridge section on trust. But it is, I mean, when we teach it, we ask the question, I trust you on a slide, and just say, what do these three words mean to you? And then
Right.
we ask people to talk about it. And you can talk about it for half an hour because it means different things. I mean, the research says there's cognitive trust, which is our rational belief that you know what you're doing and that you're dependable. And there's affective trust, our belief that you're a good person and you're selfless. So it just, it was just so much that I think people understand in their own concept what trust means contextually. And it can mean different things in different places. So I just didn't go into that because I didn't want to get lost in a discussion on trust in this book where the focus is building or diminishing.
Right. And it's interesting because I don't know what podcast it is. And honestly, I'm not, I'm blanking on her book, but we interviewed Dr. Catherine Meese, who did a lot of research on trust because it is so foundational to what you were referencing when you said, do they trust you that you have their best interest? And, and back to what we were talking about in terms of if people are going to speak up, they have to trust you. So, what are some of the best ways that people can start to build that trust?
Yeah, and this is somewhat research based, and it just made a ton of sense. I mean, the number one word that I go back to now is selfless, and it's interesting because um, trust really comes down to there's something at risk. Like if there's no risk, you don't need to trust somebody. That's actually a direct quote from a participant in one of our programs from about 5 years ago. That I love it when people say things, and there are all kinds of them now that we use. Like they just say something in class, and boom, let me take that. And there's even one. I mean, Traci, no joke. I'm teaching today, and I have an unattributed quote in the book, and in the footnote, I say a participant from our program said this. We're teaching there today, and I'm going to ask the room actually. Hey, does anybody who said this? Do you remember if you said this? So I can attribute by name. I can go back. We haven't
Yes.
posted the final manuscript yet, and so I'd love to give. It was her. I'd love to give her credit. Anyway, we had a woman who said years ago, if there's no risk, there's no need for trust.
Mhm.
And digging deeper, that there's actually academic research that talks about that exact thing. So getting back to that, selflessness, and there's a concept called swift trust. It's been researched, like what how do you get people to trust you in these like temporary teams, or we show up in an emergency situation as like a response fire department, and all of a sudden this chief's in charge of people he's never met before. How do you get people to trust you really quickly,
Mhm.
and temporarily? And there's research that talks about like staying in role. If you do things that are kind of out of character, that break stereotypes, that makes people wonder if they can trust you. But the number one thing that goes across all levels of trust is selflessness. If people see us as not about ourselves, then they tend to trust us more. And it makes sense because if something's at risk, then I know, okay, you're not just trying to protect yourself from the risk. Like we're in this together. So whatever contextually, whatever it might be,
Mhm.
um, eating last in the army,
Mhm.
whether it's I'm going to go first into this dark place and I'll step in there first, or
Mhm.
I'll give you my last, dollar. I'll sacrifice some of my salary so you can have more. Whatever it might be, um, I go to selflessness now, and from that regard. Now that gets more to the affective side of trust. Like I trust you as a person versus I trust what you're talking about, or you're about to do surgery on me, and I trust that you know what you're doing.
Right.
It's
Right.
so complicated. You can see like I
Sure.
said, it's a whole book. But
Yeah.
for anybody who just wanted like a simple answer, to me, it's selflessness. Do things that show. I mean, first you got to be selfless. That's why it's so hard. Like you can't just do something selfless to try to show it. You gotta have a selfless heart. But
Right. And I think that that goes back to your intention is what is your intention when you are thinking about other people and building them up, it kind of just becomes who you are by
mm,
default and it changes you. So all of that to say, one, how has that changed you? And then two, do you think that this idea of lifting people up, and if you keep that front and center, that that all by itself creates trust? Is that what you're talking about?
that's really interesting to think about. Yes, I don't know that I thought about it until you said it, but yes, I mean, if you are, as a way of life, making people feel bigger, right? And we intentionally in the book, I use multiple ways of saying the same thing, and so people can
Sure.
pick
Take.
which one makes the most sense to them. If we are constantly making people feel bigger, yeah, I can't see how that doesn't build trust, because now it's about them and it's not about us. There is a little bit of a connection that in that concept to the book multipliers, maybe that they are saying, in a sense, if you do all these different things as a leader, to get the most out of people, multiply their intelligence is really the bottom line of that book. But that I think it would do the same thing, that it would build some trust. So
Well, so the interesting thing about that for me is when you if you do these certain things, if you do these certain things, then they will trust you or then they will multiply or right. And so that's very much like let's get do these actions, which is
yes,
very different
it
than
is very different. You're right
right.
about that.
Yeah, than
Totally. Yeah.
put you ahead of me and let me build you up. That goes back to my first question to you, which was, do you feel like back from 2023, right? That it has changed who you are by building other people up.
Absolutely. And I hesitate to say that because I also am cognizant of the fact that I'm got a
Yep.
long, long way to go.
You're
But I
still
will
human.
say, yeah, I mean, and especially in specific situations. But
Hmm.
yes, this has made me a better person. Like, and that's with permission to speak freely, which is a concept I totally believe in. That if we set the conditions and build a culture that people can speak up, our organizations will be better.
Hmm.
I believed in it, but I also had this kind of carved out caveat that I'm okay if other people, I get why other people wouldn't believe in this. So this might not be the most pressing thing on somebody's mind in their organization. Not everybody should read this book necessarily, because for some people, it's just not in their world. I truly believe every single person could read Building or Diminishing, benefit from it. And I have zero reservations about saying this will make you better. Like, and
Yeah.
at the same time, I think it's a great point that you make. The book doesn't get into steps and like how you do it. Like, because in the center of the book is this idea that it's about how we think. Like, ultimately, it's where our heart is. Um,
Right.
in two ways. Like, what do we expect of people? And it's also made me better, Traci. This is the cool thing is the original idea really was just about this, our words and our actions and how does that make people feel. Layering in this expectation of excellence has made me better as well. Because I've realized my gap is like at times I need to do better expecting excellence. And I've become fascinated. I mean, I tell a story about being in a museum in Tokyo and looking at these samurai swords. And I just was fascinated with how the incredible craftsmanship and how the people spent their whole lives just making these swords sharper and stronger. Uh, and so I'm now fascinated with both. I think I've been working on the idea of building people up through my words, and how I treat them longer. But I also think as a leader, I'm now thinking about excellence more. And and if you really feel like you are focused on building people, then demanding excellence comes a little more naturally. Because hey, no, like I love you, you're awesome, but we're going to be great, and I'm not going to make any exceptions.
I believe in you and I believe in your potential.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what's really interesting about that is one of the things when I first started coaching was really understanding the potential of people, which came from my work as a prayer chaplain, which was learning how to not take the problem and talk about the problem, but to move beyond that and to think of this person as a holistic spiritual being, or to see their potential or to see their values and to speak to that version of the person and to have
yeah.
that in your heart, like this is who I believe you are. And so that goes, I really hadn't thought about it until you said this, and that goes hand in hand with uh, expecting excellence. I know who you are, I believe in you, and this isn't it. And then
It
along with that's building somebody up, it's the same thing.
is, and it's I think I didn't have a problem with it, but people might notice that maybe overused in the book. I shouldn't say it that way because I don't think it's overused, but
Yeah.
it's is we just keep layering in women's basketball coaches,
Yeah.
and Maggie Dixon, Pat Summitt, Kara Lawson, Becky Hammond. Like I might even be missing one, but Pat Summitt is one who might be the greatest coach of all time. Right? I mean, there's arguments for different people, but that her players said, going back to this idea of trust, that
Hmm.
when she told them things like you're not working hard enough, which I always had a tough time with as a coach because I don't, are you working as hard as you could? Like, I don't know. I don't want to be judgmental. Like people might think I'm crazy, like that are listening to that are
Right.
drivers, but that's what I struggled with.
Right.
But they said, we trusted her so much that when she told us we weren't working hard enough, we believed she was right.
That's a big deal.
She saw something in us that she knew was deeper. I mean, Jim Craig, I use it, talks about Herb Brooks' Miracle on Ice. I spend a decent whole chapter on that almost. Same thing. There was something in you that he saw that his specific phrases he was just not going to let you not get to. He did it in a different way. Like
Mhm.
Brooks was a diminisher in terms of how he talked,
Right, right, right.
but that's what Craig took away from it. Like he was going to grab he was not going to let me not fulfill my potential. And I've been missing that as a leader as well. So I love both parts of it, and I can see myself like going like you're trying to get to that top right where I am
Yeah.
constantly. It's Bruce Brown's quote that we use in the book. That's been one of the stickiest things, which is the most effective leaders are unapologetically demanding and relentlessly positive. And that's been really sticky. Tom's teaching that a lot right now.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
credit to Bruce. I read that quote about midway through thinking through this concept, and it was, boy, that's it. That's it in a phrase.
Yeah. So let me pause here for a second because say that whole thing again and do the phrase and talk about how that connects to the excellence and then also to building people up so that people can kind of wrap their minds around that. Because I
Yeah.
don't,
So I think I saw it on Facebook or LinkedIn. I mean, Bruce is, he was a junior high teacher for my older siblings, and he was the basketball coach at my high school when I was a freshman in high school. And after a distinguished teaching career, he ended up um, starting an organization called Proactive Coaching, which has almost 1 million followers on Facebook, all gained organically. Just he shares a lot of wisdom about youth sports, but he's also been a mentor to some names we've heard of in professional sports and in some business context. Just uh, there's just to paint the picture of Bruce, there's a golf tournament every June that a bunch of 60-year-olds who Bruce taught in junior high, a bunch being like 70 or 80 every year, drive an hour up to where he lives on Camino Island, Washington, to play in. He's still alive. This is not a memorial tournament. They just come play in his honor. He's going to have, like, I hate to put it this way, he's in his 80s, but thousands of people at
thousands,
his
right?
funeral,
Yeah.
all of whom are there because Bruce made them feel important and was a father figure. So that's all context for Bruce. His quote that I saw midway through this process of writing this book was the most effective leaders are unapologetically demanding and relentlessly positive. And so what he's saying is exactly this. We put the definition of a builder. It'll be on the back cover, a kind of crafted builder noun, one who expects excellence and communicates belief. So I am going to expect excellence, unapologetically demanding, and communicate relentless in a relentlessly positive way that I believe in you. And the final part of that, I'd put, Traci, that I also came to this conclusion while writing this and thinking about some things is at the point in which you can no longer believe in someone, it's time to cut. It's time to let go, like, and do them the favor of letting them move on. And you still have to have standards. And if you just can't, if you don't expect excellence of someone or see a level of potential or can't be positive with them, then you need to move on. And it's not always that easy. There's all
Sure.
kinds of HR considerations, and I get all that. And then if you find yourself doing that with lots of people, then you need to look in the mirror. But we're all going to have those moments where we don't necessarily believe in someone. And I now don't know how like how do I lead then if that's not the case, given that I bought into this so much.
Well, talk about some self-reflection, both self-leadership, and is it me that's dropping the belief, or is it that it is time to release this person? I think that
Yeah,
that's so gold by itself, and it comes back to what we were talking about in terms of the willingness to step back and ask those questions of yourself, and also to ask those questions like your son did for you. What do you mean by that, and what is actually going on?
yeah.
I know that reflection is a huge part of the referent group as well. So we did not get a chance to go over the different types of leaders. And so could you give us, we talked a little bit about the driver, could you give us an overview of the other types of leaders that are mentioned in your book, cheerleader and
Yeah, and it's again in the spirit of the book. I say it a couple times. It's not intended to like label you and say you're this or that. It's for reflection. Let me think about where I'm at within the quadrant of like a driver. There's all kinds of different iterations because this isn't
Sure.
super prescriptive, but it has been really clarifying for me, and I've watched it with some one particular friend who I talk about that I coach, who's been incredibly successful. He's a phenomenal leader. He's been the president of a bank we've all heard of, and he's now the high up in a different bank. But he looked at it right away. I was like, that's me. And so the top left is a driver, which I've mentioned, which is someone who expects excellence, demanding. This is fairly prevalent, but doesn't throw around a lot of compliments. Maybe some scowls, like kind of makes you feel smaller in certain ways, but also expects a lot.
Mhm.
Um, and then not opposite of that. And I go this whole discussion in the book of a conversation I had with my wife. But in the bottom right is the cheerleader, who also has a lot of positive qualities, like relational, believes in people, communicates that, but often avoids the tough conversations. Not necessarily. I don't want to judge people's intentions, not necessarily out of fear, but sometimes because they don't want to make people feel diminished, or they just want to keep trying to push through and believing in you, but lower the standards. Almost the soft, soft diminishment of low expectations is the way to put it. Like by, and I recognize that in myself as a coach. Times I could have pushed girls that I coached harder, but I was worried about damaging the relationship or what, like, how I would make them feel. Or
Right,
I even wondered, is this a fair critique in my mind? And I'd say one other thing that's hard is if you're going to expect excellence, like you got to demonstrate it, or you got to be a black self awareness, or just be unabashedly hypocritical. Because if
right,
you're telling people, even something like we're going to be on time, period, then you got to be on time every time. It's difficult. So leadership is hard. So there's lots of reasons that we might cheerlead rather than expecting excellence. And then the builder is the top right, and we call it an aspiration, where I am doing both those things at the same time, expecting excellence and being um, communicating belief on a regular basis, building you up. The bottom left is a belittler. Uh,
mm,
I I don't think much of you, and I don't expect a lot. And
right.
I tell you that. Sorry, I don't think much of you, and I tell you that. This is just toxic leadership. And I think we actually tell the Nate Bargatze story in that particular chapter, and don't spend a lot of time on it. Uh,
Right. Yeah.
the one, yeah, because I don't. Yeah,
Right.
there's not. We all get it. We
We all
felt
know it.
the
We know that.
anxiety. Yeah,
Right.
we felt the pit in our stomach. I mean, so
Right.
maybe, but I've drifted there as well. Like as a leader, like I've gone there with certain people, or when the pressure was on me over a period of time in the army. I can remember a time where I was just kind of that guy. So
Yeah. When you were talking earlier about the idea of risk and how you were learning from somebody who had given you that great risk quote, right? If there's nothing at risk, then there's nothing to trust. I thought that I wanted to kind of pull that out because that is a great example of how the referent group leads, how you teach all of us who work with you to lead is to constantly be open and aware to the participants and to be in this humble place of learning. And so I wanted to say that that's what it's like to be at those conferences, right? It's like a conference like
yeah,
no other because that's who you are. To me, that is gold. And for all
mm,
of our listeners or anybody who wants to be around people like Doug, like that's what we're doing in the conference. And so I want to give you before we jump into the questions just a little bit of time to talk to us about the conference that's coming up and what people could expect from it.
yeah. It's just thanks. So Tom, who will be there, Tom Houston at the conference, you'll be there teaching. Our head of coaching, Matt Kincaid, one of our new team members who is a chief of a large fire department in Eastern Washington, Tom Huntington. Going to be a great variety of teaching. But last week, Tom Houston and I were with a group, and we hear this all the time now, and I feel comfortable in sharing it because we hear it so much. We do work where people have to come. Their organization launches a leadership development initiative, a lot of time with senior leaders. I mean, this was a group of senior leaders in a medical organization. And we had a woman at the end of reflection stopped, and with the whole group. So we were doing Friday and Saturday, and Saturday was a slightly different group. So she wasn't coming back. And she said, I was dreading coming to this. Like I thought, we're just going to make us do this. And she said, this is the best thing I've ever been to. I mean, I'm saying it because she said it, but it was really cool to hear because it was, um, that you can take someone who at 9 a.m. was dreading being there. And I think, and she even talked about some of the things that changed her. So
Mm,
as odd as it may sound, we used the movie Talladega Nights, and we used Ted Lasso, and there's a lot of table discussion, six people sharing with each other based on questions we prompted. And she talked about Tom coming up and like right off the bat sharing two enormous failures that are very authentic and aren't easy to share. And he shared them a lot, so he doesn't do it with emotion anymore. But he can contain his emotions. But
right.
all of that is what you're talking about. That's the experience. And universally over a couple of decades now, what we see is people making meaning of their own through this experience and having profound insights that they developed through their own reflection. And sometimes those insights are things that somebody else at their table said. Rarely we do end of day reflection, and it's very often that there are things we never even thought like that. Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. They're not something. Well, when Doug said this, I mean, really, honestly, it's rarely that because that's not our goal. It's not the goal of the book, even, right? Like the goal of the book, and I made, I had the person who was helping me format the book move the introduction like in the table of contents right next to the rest of the contents and the epilogue because I want people to read both. And I even thought about making the introduction the first chapter, but it's truly an introduction. So
Mhm.
I kept it as an introduction. But I
Mhm.
wanted to visually say, like, read this introduction because in story form, it communicates the philosophy, I think,
Mhm.
of how we teach and of the way this book is written. But it's in a humble way that leaves the meaning to be made by those who are there in relationship with the other people who are there. And it's been, I mean, we get it all the time. Like it's just different than what people are used to or expected in a way that ends up being really positive.
Absolutely. And I went to that conference a year ago, and that's when I said I want to be a part of this team.
Hmm.
I already knew it from meeting you for the first time, actually in my mom's house as well. I think that's a little apropos. Isn't that interesting? Uh, and then the last thing I'll share is that talk about swift trust. That was one of the things that it was impactful for me is that you all, because of your vulnerability and your authenticity and your willingness to just let people be who they are, also within the parameters of this is leadership matters and it is a responsibility. That's a very unique container, and you all do it beautifully.
Yeah, and there's a lot of utility in people who have the gift of standing in front of an audience and sharing like confidently, like this is the way I think it should be done. Because in my mind, as I've thought about this over a number of years, we all kind of believe things. And when we hear someone else say it, it validates what we believe. And I've had that feeling. I mean, but that's what happened to me when I read in a book. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Like, yes, that's what I believe. Like, I already knew, it was subconsciously, I believed it. So I grabbed onto it.
Right.
And it's easier to sell. Like,
Right.
when you do it that way. But this idea of swift trust, I mean, from the way we do it, I think even what this woman said, who said she was dreading it, is like it's pretty immediately clear that we're not here to tell you how to lead. Um, that we're coming from a place of humility. If the first thing we're going to do is get up there and stand and share our failures, not so we're setting you up to share our success next. I mean, literally, because we believe that leader growth comes through humility and reflection and a learning orientation, and we want to model that. Um, you really have to see it. Like that's why we do these conferences because you have to experience it to understand the power of it. And the power of it is we are trying to unleash people to grow themselves as leaders. Going back to this idea that there are no leadership experts, we're not going to tell you how to do it.
Right.
I don't joke about it because it's a serious thing. Like it's a
Yeah.
hard thing to sell. It's a hard thing to sit in front of. I mean, we have an organization that we're actively with right now that we just got from an audience of a really discriminating audience, like a 98% 4 and 5, right? Like in their survey, like we didn't give the survey, they were just sharing the results with us. Then we went to a different audience and it was 97.9 and like a different metric.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal feedback and like we're thankful for it. And they were still kind of, saying, hey, we need a tool and we need this. And like we're giving them some of that or like tell it. Like sometimes they just want us to you to tell them how to do it.
Right.
And it's a really interesting discussion because they're the client and we honor that. And it's a good discussion and we don't, but at the same time, well, look at the feedback you just got. Like 98% of people are saying this was phenomenal.
Right.
But we do have to, and we do push people to create their own takeaways. And as you've seen, we have this, I think, handbook that's been a great addition that you take
Yeah.
away with you. But it really is, and I'll credit my friend Todd Woodruff, who I taught with at West Point, who I told him this. He's like, "Don't credit me. I got that from somewhere else." I was like, "Well, Todd, I got it from you." But
So you,
it's structured reflection of what, so what, and now what. Like what's the point I took away? Maybe it's this phrase. Maybe it's Bruce Brown's quote. Uh, the most effective leaders are unapologetically demanding and relentlessly positive. That's the what. So what? Well, I think at times I'm not always unapologetically demanding, and that made me think about this. Now what? Well, I need to
Mhm.
go out and do this. So this what? So what? Now what is a great way of unleashing people, like we said, to make meaning for themselves.
Yeah, and the interesting piece for me or is the now what? Okay, now that we've sat here and we've gone through this, now where is the action that how are you going to follow through? So
Yeah,
go ahead.
especially from a conference. I mean, I think in some of our programs, then we have
Right.
executive coaching that follows, and it can be 6 months, and we're trying to lay a foundation. But yeah, when you come away from a 2-day conference, we want people to be inspired and feel like they had a meaningful experience, but it also, if you're going to make the investment, come
Yeah.
away with something that you're going to do differently. Yeah.
Right. Well said. Well said. So I wanted to ask you one of the very first questions that came in was from another West Point graduate who I think is on this call, Lori, and she asked, okay, and so this is for you, Doug, to do it concisely to give us the best strategies for building. Go.
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. I mean, um, I think I've learned so much through this. Like for instance, I'll just give one of them that this same guy that I mentioned I had read the book. I copied one of his teaching tactics, and we talked about teaching all the time. This year, I was back at West Point a couple of years ago as a civilian, and it was typically in his office, and it felt like kind of mentorship because I've been teaching, for 20 years, and he had been teaching for a couple of months. But he gave me this idea. He FaceTimed a student's mother during class and had a bunch of cadets meet this mom on FaceTime who the cadet was telling a story about her mom. And I was like, that's awesome. The praise made him feel good. But what really made him feel good that he wrote me about like 6 months later was I went and copied it. And I didn't do this wittingly. Like this wasn't, I've learned it as a builder strategy, but I just did it. And then I told him I copied him. And that's of all our interactions, that's what he remembered most is like, you copied my idea. And there's a selflessness in that. I wasn't intentionally selfless. Like I'm not, again, I just can't not be authentic about this. Like I wasn't doing it in any way. I will now, but in
Yeah.
that case, I was just copying. I just poached his idea because it was a great idea. But he was so built by the fact that someone with expert power in his life would take his idea and use it. And our ego will get in the way of stuff like that. I mean, and so I think these things that where we can set aside our ego, be selfless, and just find ways. And that's why I think it's so much a condition of the heart. Find ways to genuinely praise people. I mean, this comes from academic research too, and I use the quote in the book. It was really interesting in finding it that people with really high expectations
Mhm.
that don't communicate a belief that you can reach those expectations causes a lot of anxiety. Like that is anxiety inducing. You want me to do this, but you're not even telling me you believe I can do it. And so, just one of the most critical things is pairing your expectations with communication of belief, and in whatever form that comes. And then
Mm.
that is why it goes back to if you don't believe in someone, then it's time to move on because it's a failed combination, an expectation of excellence without a belief that someone can achieve it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that the chart that you have, and we'll share it with our viewers, is it makes it very clear to see how that kind of unfolds in terms of what does a builder actually do. And I think what I heard when you answered that question is to be transparent, to share, be transparent in your communication, to share with other people when you are enjoying whatever they have given to you. To you can't ever overshare that.
Tracy, can I mean, I never like have Lori, if she's your friend, yours, give feedback on whether my answer sucked or didn't. Because it's in the book. I don't end up listing anything, but there are tons of examples, and there's intentionally not listed because I can't think of all the ways, and I really think it becomes a habit. But so there are some of the examples in the book. Putting your phone down. I mean, and I talk about that explicitly, like the idea that when someone's talking to you, they are the most important thing in the world right now. We all kind of know that, and we know people who make us feel like that, but I still don't do it. I mean, I talk about in the book. I was writing the book. My daughter called me to talk about buying her first house. I mean, what a gift that my 26-year-old daughter still wants to call me. And
Right.
I am half listening to her house purchasing, where she's asking for advice and continuing to write my book. And I'm literally writing about distraction. I'm not making this up. Like I'm writing about distraction as she's on the phone. And I did just say to myself, goodness gracious, just either tell her I'm on a roll, I need to call you back, or just set your computer aside. And I set my computer aside. Um, but so there are so many things, like how quickly we answer a text, whether when someone shares an idea, what's our facial expression? Like I can't cover the gamut of
Unlimited.
ways, but I think if we have this question in my mind, and if we're asking, hey, did that build or diminish? It eventually will become habit in the ways that are best for us, because some of us are better at other things. But there are, within the book, there are, I think if you were like highlighting, you'd pick up maybe 7 or 8 things that resonate with you, because there are lots of examples, but I didn't end up intentionally, I didn't end up creating a list.
Well, it's interesting. This reminds me, one of the things we do a lot in the Healthy Leaders talk about what are the things that you are doing, and sometimes you do them even if you don't feel like doing them, so that you can start to use this habit to actually transform who you are. It's not just the action, but okay, sometimes I'm going to do the right action. I'm going to put my phone down, even though I really want to know what's on my phone. Sometimes we do that action so that our thoughts and our emotions can catch up. So there's value to doing the right thing, even if you are feeling misaligned with that particular action. And the Cary Grant quote is, I pretended to be someone until I became him or he became me.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's true.
So the idea is, though, to understand simultaneously, why are we doing that action? Because I want to build people up. I want to be this type of person. It doesn't necessarily come naturally to me. So I'm going to practice these habits so that I can become more and more of who I am.
And a lot of times in this case, it's in the things that we don't say as well. I mean, this was before I even saw this Nate Bargatze clip. When I was teaching, I used to joke about dogs and cats. It sounds like a goofy little thing, and maybe it would even be like, I don't want to be worrying about everything I say. But as a teacher, you have power, and there's 36 people that you might not even know. Uh, and I just stopped joking about like how I don't like cats, because there are people in that room who love their cat, and it's going to diminish them a little bit when I put cats down. It may sound crazy, but like that's where I'm at. Like, why would I joke about cats when it's going to make someone in the audience, almost like Nate said, feel bad? So it's such a there. It pops up in my life
Everywhere.
10 to 50 times a day now. Like in things I say to my kids. I mean, I can't think of a specific example right now, but I have multiple times just in the last few months where I'm not going to say that to my son right now, because that might, I mean, when my son was going through a breakup, it was brutal. Um, he's 28 now, and he was just crushed. And I was literally thinking like, oh, I could say this to kind of, but nah, that's not, I don't know, that might make him feel worse. So let me just not say anything. I mean, but that all kind of came from this. Like if it's not going to build him, don't say it.
Right. That's super powerful. This is, we're almost ready to put a bow on it because to me, you almost said the word, I think you stopped yourself. It's such a gift. It's a huge gift. It's like the gift. If I'm choosing to pause myself and think about, am I building up? Am I loving? Am I building up? Am I being kind? Am I building up? Am I being compassionate? Am I building up? Am I thinking like there's no end to it, Lori, right? There's no end to how you can build somebody up. And it permeates every part of your life. It's an amazing gift, and your book is amazing. I love it.
No, thank you. Thanks.
So my
It's
last
it's
hard
an
question, go ahead.
it's an odd time in my life where actually like that compliment feels I struggle with all, but I'm like, thank you, because I think it is. Like I really do. Like I really hope. And to those who are listening, like the proceeds are all going to Tunnel the Towers Foundation, which builds homes for injured veterans and pays off mortgages for first responders who have died in action. And I did all these things intentionally because I believe in it so much that I don't even want anybody to think I'm making any money off this. Like, I just hope 10 million people read it and I don't make a dollar, because
Mhm.
I think it'll make people's lives better. So anyway, it was just kind of a weird feeling. I usually don't do that well with compliments, but I believe in it so much. And I'm like, oh yeah, it is amazing. Thank you.
It is amazing. It's an amazing gift. It just struck me when you were talking about tunnels to towers and building homes, like you're building the structure and then maybe the
Yeah.
book they all need to get your book, right? And build up their lives and their relationships because it is that simple and it is also that difficult and that challenging.
Yep.
And
Great
we
point.
all, and I love that you said you're still working on it. I'm still working on it. I'm working on it with my sisters and my relationships. It is a constant opportunity to be aware of who you are being. And are you being healthy? Are you building up? Or are you choosing something else?
Yeah,
So,
I just saw Lori's comment too about is it constructive? I think that's a great, yeah, it's perfect.
yeah, yeah. So, my very last question for you has to do with your health and how you
Hmm.
are being healthy mentally, emotionally, physically. I'm sure writing this book was really healthy, maybe difficult too.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of metaphors in the book about I mean, just the journey I've been on to raise my VO2 max and lower my cholesterol through the discipline of running. And I don't think I could have written the book actually without that metaphor that I've experienced over the last 3 years, because it's a similar emotional and mental discipline to try to become a person who builds on a consistent basis. So, um, yeah, I mean, I think there's a role modeling example and having that in a discipline in some form, whatever it might be, that you're committed to, but not being obsessive about it at the same time. I, I think writing this book was something I told myself I wanted to do, and I hadn't done it for a while, and I was struggling with it. And I actually read a book on a plane. I just wrote the author and thanked him because the way he wrote, where he kind of broke the fourth wall and talked about like this happened yesterday, I ended up just going, yeah, I'm going to try that. And I just wrote in that style, and it really freed me up. So that was kind of cool. I feel really good about it because you asked like who did I write it for, and this answer could come off wrong, but it's kind of true. Like I wrote it for me. I mean, I ended up just like, if no one ever reads this, like I'm good with that because this was really fun to write. It's helped me. I hope my kids, I'll make them read it. And if no one else, my wife's already heard all of it. So um, I think it was like it's either the Lord of the Rings series or the Chronicles of Narnia, where C.S. Lewis or J.R.R. Tolkien, one of the two, like wrote it for his kids, and then
Mm,
it was shelved for like a decades, and someone picked it up, and it didn't become really big till years later. That's not going to happen with this book, but
you never know.
it's in that spirit, like he wrote it with his for his kids, and so I've even thought, man, if something happened to me, this is a cool thing to leave behind. So
I would agree. It is a cool thing to leave behind. So it's interesting how you said that you're really working on your VO2 max and you're doing that through running and one of the things that we talk about is mental, emotional, and physical and how they are tied together and you can focus on one to support the other. You can, focus on building and diminishing, whether you're talking about your physical body or your emotional state or how you're making other people feel. Are you diminishing yourself? It is just such a great container for this is a great place to be healthy. Are you building or diminishing mentally, emotionally, physically? And it's such a simple yet powerful message that I'm honored to have you share with us. So thank you for being here. This has been great.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being part of our team. We love
Yeah,
having
yeah, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. So
you.
everyone, that is Doug Crandall, Building or Diminishing, coming this summer. So if this conversation resonated with you, I would love to have you first and foremost purchase the book. Secondly, if you want to be a part of this, come to the Referent Group Conference, which is happening June 3rd and 4th. Did I get that right, Doug? June 3rd and
Yes.
4th?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, June 3rd and 4th, and where you can feel this in person and where you can be built up. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate it and I appreciate you. Take care.
Thanks, Trace.